Well, hello and welcome back to the Bookshelf Odyssey. My name is Art and we are exploring my bookshelves today. And I'm doing my weekly wrap up. I finished 3 books this week, and then I'll let you know how I'm getting along on my slow read of Emma by Jane Austen. So this week I read an excellent mystery novel. It's called Bluff by John DeDakis, and it's book 2 in the Lark Chadwick series. And I was able to interview John DeDakis on my podcast last year sometime, and I'll make sure to link that interview down below. You can see it here on my channel. He's a journalist, and he is currently also helping to mentor and teach authors on how to write. This is a book, as I said, book 2 in the Lark Chadwick series. The main character, Lark, she's a reporter just learning the trade, and she's being mentored by an old grizzled reporter. It's really a lot of fun watching their relationship develop, and how Lionel is becoming, kind of going from this gruff, heartbroken man to maybe seeing Lark as the daughter that he doesn't have. As we find out in book 1, Lionel's daughter died tragically on a trip to Peru. And in book 2, we get some clues uncovered and a mystery solved around her death that hopefully will bring some closure to Lionel. So in this book, Lark goes up against an unscrupulous real estate mogul, and then she gets also caught up in a murder in which she is the suspect, and then also helps to, like I said, uncover some new information and solve the murder of Lionel's daughter. It's a tightly paced mystery. It's very intriguing, especially how the two different storylines interact with each other, and the characters are really outstanding, especially Lark, the main character, and you see her walking into the trap of being accused of this murder that happens, and it's just so delightfully written that I read through it in just a couple of days. It was a very well written mystery. And as I said, the author he himself is a journalist, so the story carries a lot of authenticity to it. It feels real, and some of the tropes and things that come with journalist characters. You're getting the truth here in the story, and it's authentic without being bogged down in technical details. Someone like me, who knows nothing about journalism, can follow along and understand the whys and do's and don'ts of journalism very easily, so you don't get lost in that. I am anxiously awaiting the chance to read book 3, which I probably will sometime later this year. And I would say that this was probably my first 5-star read of the year. It was a really well done mystery. Well, then what I liked about it is that the theme of the book, Bluff, it has kind of a double meaning to it. One of the characters, well, actually 2 of the characters are killed by falling off of a bluff. But also the story kind of plays with the idea of the news media, and are they bluffing you, and who's bluffing whom, and the real estate mogul likes to try to bluff people as well, and kind of just continuing to explore that idea that we are controlled by the media, or are we? So it's really, really well done on many, many levels. I would really recommend this series, especially if you are interested in journalism and exploring the ideas of journalist integrity. Does the news media manipulate us, and how they spin things, and how they can investigate crime and different things like that? It's really, really fascinating. The second book I finished this week is called Jane Eyre by Mimi Matthews, and it is a gender-swapped retelling of Jane Eyre. So you get Jane Eyre, who's the main character, and he goes to work for Mrs. Rochester, she has 2 sons that he's coming to tutor for. As he's there, it really plays out much like the plot of Jane Eyre. Not quite as much of a copy like, again, like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies was, but yet not as free as Tears of Price's Jane Austen mysteries are, where she very cleverly retells the story without really even copying it like a beat by beat retelling. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle of that. And I do like Tears of Price's series actually a lot better than this book. And I would say if there is a fault to it, it's that it does follow the plot, but then you could also argue that it's kind of supposed to, because it's mostly just it is gender swapped, but then also the author leans very heavily into the gothic and the scary. The different secrets may indeed be supernatural in nature. I really don't want to say more than that without giving away too many spoilers, so I'll just give you a hint. And if you want to skip ahead a couple seconds, you should. It may or may not involve vampires, so you definitely want to check that out. A gender-swapped Jane Eyre with vampires. I mean, that's an elevator pitch. You got my attention. It was really fun to read, especially reading it from the perspective of having the gender roles switched. Also, with the addition of some of the supernatural elements to it, it was a lot of fun. But in the end, obviously, I think Jane Eyre is the better story, but you know, how are you going to compete with Charlotte Bronte, right? Yeah, overall, it was a fun and spooky read. I did only give it 3 stars. That's about average for me. Somewhere between 3 and 4 stars. And then I think she had a missed opportunity to gender swap the reader, I married him line, but oh well. So then I finished my first Victorian novel of the year, and it's called New Grub Street by George Gissing. And very, very simple summary is that it's a book about writing. It follows several characters who are authors and their struggle with this idea of, do I write for money or do I write for pleasure? Even though it might not earn me as much money, it's more authentic to what I want to write, and it's more true to myself and to my art. And where is that line drawn? So in that sense, it was a very compelling read. The book jacket says it's about this, and I'll be careful of spoilers, but it says, scholarly, anxious Edwin Reardon had achieved a precarious career as the writer of serious fiction. On the strength of critical acclaim for his 4th novel, he has married the refined Amy Ewell. But the brilliant future Amy expected has evaded her husband. The catastrophe of the Reardons' failing marriage is set among the rising and falling fortunes of novelists, journalists, and scholars who labor in the valley of the shadow of books. This was published in the autumn of 1890. Apparently, George Gissing wrote it at breakneck speed to get it out, and it's considered one of his best novels. I don't know anything about George Gissing, so I kind of went into it blind. I'd never read any of his books or writings, and usually I like to try to read a little bit about their biography, but I didn't in this case. And I liked it well enough, especially the examination, like I said, of the struggle of writing and what to write, but also the marriage between Edwin and Amy I found to be very fascinating. The struggles they had, how it was falling apart, what were the legal ramifications of the decisions they made, and how one character receives an inheritance, but is it really hers to use? Because usually the money goes to the male or to the husband, and things like that are explored in this novel. And as it's closing out, the 1800s, some of it is a little bit different than what you might have read earlier in some earlier Victorian novels, but overall, it was still a very good read. Enough to maybe want to check out some more of George Gissing's work. And as far as the title goes, apparently, I had to look this up. Grub Street, which in the 18th century became synonymous with hack literature, by Gissing's time, Grub Street itself no longer existed, though hack writing certainly did. And a little bit more about the novel, according to Wikipedia, there's 2 characters who are starkly contrasted. here, and that is, again, Edwin Reardon, who's a novelist of some talent but limited commercial prospects, and a shy, cerebral man, and Jasper Milvain, a young journalist, hardworking and capable of generosity, but cynical and only semi-scrupulous about writing and its purpose in the modern world, or the late Victorian world. Anyway, so that's all I'll say about that, but it's a really fascinating look at the two different characters. And then just a few things about George Gissing. Okay, I was looking up some of the things he wrote. It said that he has written 23 novels between the years of 1880 and 1903, so quite prodigious. And some of his best-known works include New Grub Street and The Odd Women, which I've heard about that on booktube, and that's actually one on my TBR list. So yeah, that's a story. I think it's about it explores again the role of women in society, and it follows. I think the main characters are women who don't want or are not married, and they end up working to support themselves, and so therefore they're considered odd. Victorian morals at its finest there, I guess. So yeah, definitely I'll be reading. That's a book I wanted to read. Oh, it also looks like he wrote a book of criticism called Charles Dickens: A Critical Study. So definitely will need to check that out. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna certainly add more of his books to my TBR, I think, and might read some down the road. Like I said, I enjoyed reading this. The last couple of Victorian novels I've tried reading, I think I DNF'd one and then hadn't really enjoyed a couple of the others. So I was happy to read another Victorian novel that I got through and that was really enjoyable to read. I kept thinking about what would happen to the characters next, and what decisions would they make, and would their marriage be saved in the end, and all that. Is a really good reading. All right, so that's what I read. Just to do a quick update on my Emma reading, I did finish chapter 3 only this week, so I haven't really made much progress there. But we do get introduced to a significant character. We get introduced to Harriet Smith. It says this of her. It says, Harriet Smith was the natural daughter of somebody. Somebody had placed her several years back at Mrs. Goddard's school, and somebody had lately raised her from the condition of scholar to that of parlor boarder. This was all that was generally known of her history. She had no visible friends but what had been acquired at Highbury, and was now just returned from a long visit in the country to some young ladies who had been at school there with her. So she's introduced to Emma, and Emma takes a liking to her and decides that she's going to help refine her and shape her into a lady. So I had hoped to have gotten through a little bit more of Emma than just one chapter, and only that this morning. So I might have to rethink my plan to just read whatever I want, whenever I want, if I keep not reading it. But we'll see. I do have some time off coming up here soon, and I hope to get some reading done on Emma as well as some other books. I did go to a bookstore just this past week. My wife and I had a date, so we went to Half Price Books because we really know how to party. And I was able to find a Jane Austen biography that I don't have and was on my to buy list. It's called Jane Austen: A Brief Life by Fiona Stafford, and it says that every devoted reader feels that in some way they know Jane Austen, but how can we make sense of her extraordinary achievements? At a time when most women received so little formal education and none could obtain a place at university, how did Austen come to write novels that have commanded the attention of some of the most brilliant minds ever since? Why were hers the books that Darwin knew by heart and Churchill read during the Blitz? In this graceful introduction to the author's life and works, Fiona Stafford offers a fresh and accessible perspective, discussing Austen's 6 astonishing novels in the context of their time. That sounds really good, and I look forward to hearing the answers to those questions that she brings up. Especially, that idea of how could this woman back in Regency time with little education write such wonderful books that, these great intellects of the 20th century read them. So yeah, interesting questions. I'll be fascinated to know how she answers those. So that book I probably won't get around to reading anytime soon, but I will add it to my stack of favorite author biographies. Well, that'll do it for me today. We had a snow and ice storm come through, so I got to get out and shovel. But thank you for watching. As always, make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you next time. So until then, take care and happy reading.